You ever notice that one quiet kid in the room, the one who doesn't really ask for anything, who almost seems to shrink into the background? Well, that's not always just shyness. It can be a sign of a really deep, kind of invisible wound. Today, we're going to dive into the psychology of the ignored child and how that silence from way back when can echo for a whole lifetime.
Wow. This quote, it just gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? The real tragedy here isn't a lack of worth, it's that a child's entire sense of self was built in a vacuum of silence. And that can lead to this lifelong feeling of being, well, invisible.
All right, so let's get specific. What are we actually talking about when we say ignored child? I think it's important to know this isn't always about something big and dramatic. A lot of the time, it's about what wasn't there. And that's the thing, right? It's so subtle. We're talking about emotional neglect, which can just be absence. It's the questions that go unanswered, the lack of eye contact, the parent who's just too distracted to really see them. From the outside, everything can look totally fine, but inside that child, a core foundation is starting to crack.
And this is where it gets really interesting psychologically speaking. This whole experience literally hardwires the brain. There's a term for it, an internalized neglect schema. Basically, a child who gets ignored enough times, well, they adapt. They stop asking. They start to convince themselves that needing attention or love is wrong, that it's a burden. So they learn to make themselves smaller to survive. It's a brilliant adaptation, but a truly heartbreaking one.
Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and look at the science of it all. Because this isn't just, a feeling. We're talking about real, measurable impacts on a developing brain. When you break it down, developmental psychology tells us that all kids need 3 core things to really thrive. They need to feel safe, they need stimulation, and they need connection. And while all 3 are absolutely crucial, it's that last one, connection, that feeling of being seen and valued that really shapes who we become. For the ignored child, this is the one need that just goes completely unmet over and over again. And this ties right into what John Bowlby called attachment theory. When a parent or caregiver consistently acknowledges a child, sees them, responds to them, it builds this secure foundation, like a blueprint for what a healthy relationship should feel like. But without that, a child can start to believe something really dangerous. Maybe I'm just not worthy of love. Now, check this out. This is the chain reaction that happens in the brain, and it is wild. A child reaches out for connection and gets nothing. Their brain doesn't just register that as disappointment. No, it registers it as a threat to survival. Then cortisol, the stress hormone, just floods their system. If you repeat that enough times, you literally rewire their nervous system to expect rejection as the default setting. So, fast forward a few decades. How do these survival strategies from childhood actually show up in adulthood? Well, the echoes can be quiet, but believe me, they are incredibly powerful. This part is so fascinating. A lot of the time, these coping mechanisms look like superpowers on the outside. You get someone who's fiercely independent, or a super high achiever, or the person who can make peace in any situation. But under the surface, there's a hidden cost. That independence often masks a deep struggle to trust anyone or ask for help. That high achievement, it's often driven by a nagging feeling of never being good enough. And that peacekeeping, it hides someone who can't say no to protect themselves. And when it comes to romantic relationships, man, this core wound can show up in 2 totally opposite ways. On one hand, you have the person who avoids relationships altogether. They push people away because they believe closeness is just too dangerous. On the other hand, you have the person who desperately clings to anyone who shows them affection, constantly trying to earn the love they never felt they got for free. 2 different behaviors, but they both come from that exact same fear. Let me paint a picture for you, just to make this really hit home. Imagine a little 8-year-old, just buzzing with excitement. They made this amazing drawing in school, and they can't wait to show it off. So they run home, they hold it up, with that hopeful look in their eyes, waiting for that moment of connection. But the parent is busy, on the phone, looking at a screen, distracted. The moment just fizzles. The kid's bid for connection isn't met with anger or criticism, but with something way more confusing. Just nothing. Silence. So what does the kid do? They just quietly put the drawing away. And the lesson they learn, without a single word being said, is profound. My excitement isn't important. My joy is an interruption. And right there, in that one quiet moment,
The ignored child starts to become the adult who automatically dismisses their own achievements and their own feelings. Okay, I know this all sounds pretty heavy, but here is the most important part of this whole story. This is not a life sentence. Understanding the wound is the first step, sure, but healing is absolutely possible. So the big question is, how do you even begin to break this cycle? So where do you start? Well, it's probably not with some huge dramatic gesture or a big confrontation. It actually begins somewhere much, much quieter. It begins right here, with this, the simple act of self-validation. Just saying to yourself, what happened to me was real. It mattered. My pain is valid. For someone who spent a lifetime feeling like their needs were unimportant, that simple statement is, well, it's a revolution. And from that recognition, healing starts to look like a series of small, consistent actions. Think of them as small revolutions. Each one is a tiny rebellion against that old wiring. Pausing to actually celebrate a win. Saying your feelings out loud, even if it's just to yourself. Daring to ask a friend, hey, I need you to just listen for a second. It can feel terrifying, but these are the very actions that build new pathways of trust and worthiness in the brain. And you know, the ripple effect here is huge. These cycles of neglect, they often get passed down without anyone even realizing it. So when one person does the work to heal, they're not just reclaiming their own voice, they're breaking a chain. They're stopping that silence from being passed on to the next generation. That healing, it ripples outward. So if there's one thing to really take away from all this, it's this. The past absolutely leaves its mark. It shaped you, for sure, but it does not get to define you. It's a chapter in your story, not the whole book. And that brings me to one last kind of beautiful thought. There's a paradox here. The very person who knows the sting of being unseen often develops this extraordinary capacity for empathy. They become the best listeners, the most compassionate friends. The pain of the past can actually be transformed into a unique kind of gift. So the real question is, what will you do with that wisdom?